If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Escape Pod, a part serious, part hilarious dramedy featuring stories of escape. I am Julie here with Charity in our little escape pod on the One Heart campus. How are you today?
I'm good. You look lovely today, by the way.
Well, it's because I curled my hair.
Okay.
That's all I did.
The magic of a curling iron.
Well, I go some days where I'm not going to
This is the transformation campus.
I go days where I'm not going to see a lot of people outside of not just coworkers. Please don't take it that way, my fellow awesome One Heart coworkers.
No, hey, if you're comfortable enough to, hey.
But if I'm going to do anything else, then I kind of feel like I have to, try. Anyway, are you escaping from anything this week or wishing you could?
Well, I can't say the weather this time. What am I escaping today? I had one earlier. I was ready, and they're right out of my head, so I have to start writing them down. And then I'll just run around with sticky notes going, ooh, 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 ooh. I can use that. What am I escaping today? I think people who make assumptions about things and formulate opinions about people on completely erroneous facts.
That's fair.
Yeah, like we can't be bothered to actually go to the source or do some homework. We hear a thing from somebody who's heard a thing, and it becomes, a national incident, and it's just, I won't go into details, but it's just getting old.
Going to go the opposite direction and give a shout out because, I'm the first person to complain about the drop-off line at a school and wanting to escape from the people who don't use it properly. But I will tell you this week, very good luck in the drop-off line at school. So people...
Ooh, maybe it's getting out there. We're putting it in the ether, and people are like going, ooh, I don't want... Julie Oberlander's going to stare me down. I'm going to get publicly shamed.
I will say there was one car that was sitting there this morning, and I initially was really annoyed until I realized that the mom was out of the car with the student. This is middle school, so times are tough sometimes, right? And clearly the child, something was wrong. And so when I realized there's a reason the car isn't moving and the kid's having a hard time with something, then I wasn't annoyed because I was like, I get it. I would do the same thing. Mom's comforting the kid. Day hasn't even started yet. That's tough. So, so I let that one slide, even though they were not using the line properly, but for a good reason. So I thought, she needs to escape from something.
I know what I was going to escape. I remembered now because you're just empathizing with this mother and child.
Yes.
I just had a chiropractic visit this morning, and as I was leaving, the gentleman in front of me had a little toddler in his arms, and we're 2 feet apart from each other going in the same direction. And then the little kiddo starts projectile vomiting.
Oh, no.
So I had just been adjusted, and I had to jump out of the way, or you would not be probably liking me in this enclosed space right now. Poor guy. He just looked so mortified, like he didn't understand what was happening.
Yeah, when they're little,
started
they don't
again,
know.
And Dad's running to the bathroom, and then, So that's what I was escaping. I'm like, projectile vomit, that's a good thing. So I made it.
Oh.
Yeah. And then I got to hear the story. This is really fun because of that happening today. Brad Kruger, one of our consultants, hilarious. So he has a little guy, and he was talking about being on the holiday trolley. He lives in Chicago. And his little guy was so excited for this holiday, and Santa's on the thing, and people are just, families and singing and happy holiday, blah, 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 blah. And his little guy throws up on the window.
Oh, no.
First, and doesn't what's he's 2, what's going on?
He's little.
And so Brad's trying to hold his little guy up and clean the window with his sleeve. And then he can see he's going to throw up again. He opens up his jacket, and then his little guy throws up in his jacket because he's just trying to contain it because this thing is moving. And then it happens again as they're trying to get out. So he's got 2 rounds of vomit inside his jacket, and they were like, we have to get off this trolley. So they get off, and he said they were like 5 blocks away from their house. They live in a downtown, very urban area. And so he said it was really, it's funny now, but he's like covered in vomit. So he strips down to his T-shirt because it's gross. It's like 10, 20 degrees outside. And they're walking home, and they keep like playing leapfrog with the trolley at stop lights and stuff. And so he can see his little son's puke on the window. And I'm just like, and the way he told it in his Brad way, it was so funny.
Oh,
not funny at the time.
The only thing that makes it not so bad is it's your own kid. Like, what makes it worse is when it's like somebody else's, either somebody else, an adult, or somebody else's kid. You always feel sorry for them when it's well, I feel sorry for anybody when they don't feel well, but when it's a kid, you're like you were like, oh no. But I had one time, I have a very sensitive nose.
Oh, same.
Very sensitive.
Yeah, I think I'm part animal, hunting dog or something.
God, my husband was home because I had a kiddo get sick, and we have been very blessed. Not a lot of stomach bugs in our household, even among little kids. But we had a doozy one time, and same thing. He was pretty little. He was 4 maybe at the most. And so, yeah, he's like, he doesn't even know what's happening. He can't control it, whatever. And, but I remember like when I got him in a place, he was like in the tub. I don't even think the water was on. I just set him in the tub because I was just like, you just have to be someplace where it's contained. And I walked down to my husband, and I'm like, you have to come up and help, because I started to try and clean it up, and then I was doing that, gagging almost uncontrollably to the point I'm like, I'm going to be sick myself. And fortunately, this is the beauty of having a husband who's an EMT. He has seen a lot and smelled a lot of disgusting things. And he's the one who's like, but it's my own kid, so it's fine. He didn't care one bit. And so he was like my knight in shining armor, because I'm like, I can't clean it up. Like I felt so bad. It was like my mom failure moment, because when people are always like, when it's your own kid, you can do it, blah, blah, blah. I've had that, and one other time when my kiddo got hurt. Now, my husband was there, so that maybe was why my reaction was the way it was. But when people always say like, oh, when it's your own kid, you can do it. And I'm like, but I actually have handed the kid back to him and been like, I can't.
Take him.
Like, the smell that time was a level of disgusting that I've never smelled before or since, to be quite honest. And then the other one, he hurt his head. He slipped in and ended up falling onto a sharp thing, and it cut his head, and it ended up like, you can still see a little scar. It's okay. But I remember I was like, come here, buddy. I'll like, come to mom. And then when I saw it right next to my face, I was like, I said, Jeremy, you're going to have to take him, because it was not good. It looked pretty bad. And then once they cleaned it, it didn't actually look that bad at all. But in that moment, I was like, see, people say, you can do it, you can do it. And if Jeremy wouldn't have been there and I didn't have anybody to hand him off to, I could have done it. But I was super grateful.
That reminds me, for something you just said triggered. I'm trying to remember what this is called as I madly Google it. So my son, this is funny. He's going to kill me. So he's going to kill me. Oh, gosh. Okay. So 3 episodes, and it's some kind of, it's like, okay, there's crisis brain. So fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Mm-hmm. And then there's also something where people will like almost play dead when they think they're in danger, but they're not doing it consciously. It's like
it's like playing possum.
Yep. So it's like I can't remember what it's called though. It's a small percentage of people. But I knew nothing about this. So the first time it happened, I had just gone to Deadwood actually for a retreat with the board I was on, and my husband calls me and he says, "Alec just passed out at school," and I'm like, "What?" And I'm thinking, well, this was South Middle School before, like they're rebuilding now, but it had no AC. He was in a suit that day for something. So I'm like, maybe he just overheated. Yeah. You know, it would get really hot in there. And nope, that's not what did it. He was in health class, sex education video.
He is going to kill you.
And they were talking about venereal diseases, and next thing, boom. Plugs out his, and we're like, oh my God. So Tim gets him home for a while. He read, then he goes back to school and he's fine. And so we don't think much of it. Like, okay, maybe he was hot. It was a combination of things, whatever. Well, then his buddy Trent talks him into, well, the boys, they go to see a movie. I don't remember what it was called because it's not something I would watch. Mm-hmm. But it had to do with cannibals. It was a horror film. Oh, I don't remember what it's called, but I guess it was really graphic. And so Alec is at the movie theater and faints. And so again, you know, these are years apart. We're like, well, all right, maybe this is a thing. And then one night, Tim and I were huge Stephen King fans. And so they had made a movie out of one of the books that we'd read, and we always like to compare and see if how it stands up. And so I think it was Dr. Sleep, and there's a scene where so these are like, it's vampires, but it's not blood. They're like they suck your energy out, kind of a thing. And so
they're my children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Just making sure.
Okay. I guess this is a thing. So so they found this little kiddo, and they're like all convening on this little kiddo and like, you know, sucking the thing out of it and out of him. And my son pops. He's not watching the movie with us. He's just coming through because the family room is on the way to his bedroom, and he sees this. And then he's like, sits down for a while. He gets up, goes upstairs, and we hear a big thunk. And I'm like, he dropped something. Yeah, he dropped him.
Oh my God!
It hit him, and he fell, and he like cracked his chin on the island on the way down, and he was out for like probably just 5-10 seconds or whatever, and gets up, and then that's when I start researching it, and it's like, yeah, there's that little. It's like a sleeper cell of like. Your body, like your brain can't tell the difference between something real or vividly imagined. And so you see, for some people, you see these things and believe your subconscious system believes that the threat is real. And it's like, play dead.
That is weird.
Wild. It's wild. Those are the only 3 times that I know of. If he's done it other times.
Well, he doesn't remember the other times they've happened when somebody wasn't there to see it.
He remembers them.
Oh, he does.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He knows like what triggered it, but he's not
purposely.
He just starts to feel like, woozy. You know, like, and he's not a big partier or drinker or anything. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah. But he has, and so he knows what that feels like, and he's like, yeah, it's just like all of a sudden, you know, unstable and just feeling a little bit plunk.
That's interesting. Yeah. Fascinating.
Yeah.
All right. On that note, what's our...
Oh, I have a story for you today. And I thought because it was pretty dark last time. That one was... It was hard to get through.
It was sad. Charity sent me a list of just topics, and I randomly chose one. I'm like, I'm in the mood for this. Now I don't remember.
You think you are.
Right?
Well, I just said Amelia Dyer, the baby farmer.
Yeah.
Do you know what baby farming is?
I would guess it would be like a form of human trafficking.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
But no, that's an interesting guess.
Okay.
And I can see how one would think that. So she was also dubbed the Ogress of Reading, or the Reading Baby Farmer. So this is wild. She was born on June 10th, somewhere between 1836 and 1838. And I'll tell you a story later of why it's a sliding scale. Sure. We can't quite narrow it down. In a little village in what is today known as Bristol in England. She was the youngest of 5 children. She had 3 brothers and a sister at first. Her father was a shoemaker. He had a good, solid business. So she was educated. She learned to read and write, developed a love of literature, poetry. But, you know, even especially in the Victorian era, I mean, life was harder. Mm-hmm. Well, in some ways. Even happy, cohesive families can be struck by tragedy. Mm-hmm. So her mother contracted typhus. Do you know what that is?
I've heard of it. I don't know. I couldn't tell you the symptoms.
So it's like a fever disease, and it's caused by bacteria that's contracted from like lice or fleas or chiggers, you know. So she got this, and the illness, because you're cooking your brain, right? You're having a fever. I am not a physician, so please, doctors, don't scream at me. This is my way of my interpretation, but it brings on a lot of mental illness, and so she became quite mentally ill.
The
mom, and would lash out in violent fits, and Amelia had to care for her through all of this. So presumably her father and brothers could keep working to sustain their large family, right? But her mother died in 1848. She lost that battle. She also lost her older sister at age 6. And then there was another baby sister who was born and didn't survive past a few months. So it's like just boom, 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 a lot of loss and trauma at a pretty early age, even though it was pretty common in that era for children not to live that long and people not to live into, super advanced ages and things like that. You just never know how something's going to hit you. And so once her mother died, for whatever reason, I could not find, and I mean, there are a lot of sources. And by the way, all the sources will be in the show notes. But she was sent to live with an aunt. And then while she was there, she took on an apprenticeship with a corset maker.
Okay.
So good, solid trade. Her dad died when she was about 22 or so. And then right after that, couple years, she married a man by the name of George Thomas, who was 59 years old when she was 22. And so she would have been, she actually would have been around 24 at the time. But fun fact, both she and George lied about their ages on their marriage certificate to reduce the age gap. So George said he was like, 11 years younger, and Amelia made herself like 6 years older. And that could be why that date of birth thing is such a moving target. But she got married, she's doing her thing. She starts training as a nurse. He dies shortly after, so she loses her husband, again, because he was a lot older than her. And she soon remarried a man by the name of William Dyer. So that's how she came up with Amelia Dyer. They had 2 children together, a little boy and a little girl. For reasons I, once again, can't find, she ends up leaving him. And that's really strange in that era. Like, even if good for her. Like, if he was abusive or whatever, I don't have a reason. But she left him for some reason and became a midwife. So she's in the midwife trade and starts to realize that this is a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it's not very profitable. And she has a family to take care of. Now she's a single mom. So she and this lady who had trained her to become a midwife finally figure out that they could get into what they call baby farming. So essentially, this was the practice of using your home to house women who got pregnant illegitimately, so out of wedlock or scandal or whatever. And then they would farm the babies out for adoption. The caveat was that if those babies didn't die of neglect or malnutrition first. So what was going on during that time, like 1834, something called the Poor Law Amendment Act was enacted, which made it so that fathers of illegitimate babies were not financially obligated to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
So dads were completely off the hook. They could go plant their seeds anywhere they wanted and not have any kind of, whatever obligation. And so, first of all, what we know about Victorian England, it was very taboo for a woman to even have sex before marriage, let alone get pregnant. I mean, it was just, you could ruin a family's reputation, blah, blah, blah. And then for poor people, it was even more of a burden because they had no way of taking care of. And then a lot of times, attractive women or poor women were preyed upon by wealthier men who now had no obligation to take care of the offspring if that happened, and by then I'm sure they pretty much knew how babies came. They
One would hope
how babies happen.
Right.
So baby farming kind of became a necessity. And just like any business that kind of comes onto the scene hard and fast, somebody's going to figure out a way to capitalize gains and yeah. So you're starting to get the picture. So some of the baby farmers required, like they take payment up front in full. Others would set up people on payment plans. But basically, women were forced to hide away until their babies were born and then just waltz and go back to wherever they came from without their child. Like, oh, I was just on a holiday, or whatever. And just simply due to this ludicrous stigma at the time of being an unwed mother. And so just like now, there were reputable baby farmers, reputable in any business. And if you came from a wealthy family, you had access to the reputable ones. If you didn't have money, you kind of had to roll the dice and take your chances. So Amelia, did you have a question?
Yeah. So as in when you say more reputable, that it was an early adoption agency. Yeah. Like it was meant to find good homes. It was meant to, those were, okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Exactly. Before any of this was in ordinance or law form. So she could see this had a lot of potential. I mean, literally, people would place advertisements for this. They'd meet potential clients. She would assure them that she was well-trained and loving and all the blah, 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 respectable, all that kind of a thing. Also a married woman, which maybe technically she was. She just had no man in the picture. So that didn't seem to factor in. But people, she could pull it off. She came from a good family. She knew how to walk the talk and play the game. So this led to a lot of people putting a growing number of infants in her care, many of whom she helped deliver into the world, right? So especially for the poorer people, they were often put in, they were exploited, for financial gain. They had no other options and their life was going to be ruined and they had to figure it out. So again, if a baby had well-off parents who wanted to keep the birth a secret, the single fee might be as much as £80, which would be equivalent to 12,000 pounds or $15,000 US today.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. 50 pounds, which is back then $7,500 today or $9,500 US, might be negotiated if the father of the child wanted to hush up his involvement. But it was more common for the young expectant women to be impoverished. And so they might be charged around £5, which would be about 750 pounds or $950 US today. But she got greedy. And so she took on more, kind of like the story you and I were talking about earlier, took on more kids than she could possibly handle. Yeah. So you can imagine the living conditions. And she finally figured out, this is horrible. This is where we get into the interesting stuff. It was more profitable for her if the infants did not survive. So she could take the money. She didn't have any overhead because there was no little body to take care of, right? And at first it wasn't clear whether these deaths were intentional, but it's believed she ended up starving them to death to save money. Mm-hmm.
So how is this story better than the one we went over last week?
Well, they're not raped and
all right,
oral sex and get strangled to death,
I'm still horrified.
And sold by their mother.
That's true. Did the mothers know?
I'll get to that.
Okay.
I will get to that.
I'm jumping the gun.
They presumably don't know that this is going to be their child's fate. In fact, when they do finally figure all this out, they find a lot of letters from parents that are like wanting to know how our mothers wanting to know how their child is doing. And I didn't document this one, but there was one story of like a governess who this happened to. And she started having suspicion. So she goes there. Oh, yeah, your baby's fine. Your baby's fine. Well, I want to come see him or her. And she strips the child to look for a particular birthmark that her baby had. And this baby had no birthmark. So there is suspicion growing. But she's said to have injected babies with some different chemicals to curb their appetites, including something they called Mother's Friend, which was an opium-laced syrup. And it would keep the babies quiet. So essentially, they were stoned out of their minds as they starved to death, right? So later, after she was discovered, because clearly we know that we're going to know how the story ends, it was actually starvation that killed him, not overdose. So
interesting.
Mm-hmm. Ugh. So at this time, the little babies would die. She goes to the doctor. She's getting the death certificates issued, And he starts to become suspicious because, like, this is a lot of death certificates I'm signing, from this one source. So she was arrested and charged with allowing babies to die of neglect, and she was sentenced to 6 months of hard labor. Presumably, they couldn't imagine that someone was doing this on purpose, right? So, because you're like 6 months? It's kind of insane.
It is insane.
But it's hard for good, well-intentioned people to think that anyone could do something this horrific, right? So 6 months of hard labor, and then she claimed this experience left her mentally ill. I would argue she was probably mentally ill prior to this.
Going in, yeah.
And then, but after she got out of jail, she was cycled in and out of mental hospitals, and that led to self-medicating. She used alcohol and laudanum, which was similar to what she was giving the babies. So it took her a while, but then she got back into the baby farming business because, man, it was the golden ticket back then. But she was smarter about it this time. So no death certificates. No way. Not going to do that again. She also used a fake name. Multiple fake names, in fact. She also moved around a lot. And this time after a baby would die, she would wrap their little bodies up, sometimes in bulk. Like here's like 5 or 6 babies all together, weigh them down with bricks and toss them into whatever body of water was nearby, like the river or a lake or whatever. And this time she would kill the babies by strangling them to death with like the dressmaking, like the edging tape you would use in dressmaking. So the soft little tape, and wrap it around their little necks twice, tie it in a little knot. And so it would slowly strangle them.
I hope she was still drugging them first.
I hope so too. But
we don't know.
That's what we don't know. But the way she was doing it, it made it hard when the bodies were found to determine if they were stillborn or if they had been murdered. Like it was hard to tell. So she was crazy. She wasn't an idiot. She learned after this first stint, did not want to go back to jail. So later, after she is busted, she said, "I used to like to watch them with the tape around their neck, but it was soon all over with them."
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So this is a very, very, very disturbed individual.
Yeah.
Okay. So then one day, here's kind of the beginning of her end. A bargeman on the Thames in Reading, he saw a box along the riverbank, and he gets curious. What do you do? Pull over, row over, barge push over?
I don't know. Last time I drove a barge.
I never navigated a barge, but
I can't
so
say
he gets
what
over there.
Do.
He opens the box, and there's a body of an infant inside. So the detectives get involved. And they suspected it was her, but they needed proof. So this is really cool. They decided they tricked her. So they recruited a young woman who went undercover to request her services. I think she was going by Mrs. Thomas at the time.
Okay.
And so that's how they entered her home. And they raided her home, yielded all kinds of things. Aside from the stench of death, telegrams about adoption arrangements, letters from concerned mothers inquiring about the well-being of their kids, receipts for newspaper advertisements, pawn tickets for children's clothing after the fact. That was her secondary income. She'd sell all the stuff the parents left with their babies. Yeah, it was really sick. And then this edging tape that she used to strangle the babies. Authorities estimated that upwards 20 children had been in the care of Mrs. Thomas within the last few months alone. But then when they added up all her aliases, it was as high as 400 over a 30-year period of babies she killed.
Oh,
yeah,
like serial killer.
Oh yeah, just of children, which is just wild. And when you look at this woman, I should show you a picture. Ogress of Reading.
Yeah,
very fitting. Very fitting. So she was arrested, charged with murder, imprisoned, and the court rejected her plea of insanity. The jury met for just 4 minutes before convicting her. She was condemned to death by hanging, and her last words were, "I have nothing to say."
Oh, wow.
And that was it. It's a story of...
Probably not a lot of women hung in the 1800s.
Well...
Here or in England or elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, there are some things, and I may touch on them at another time, but... women in poverty, it was more inclined to happen to than than, of course, women of wealth and stature.
Sure.
So, yeah. It was, I mean, poverty is no joke.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just no joke, and it's never been in any era, right?
Right.
So,
man, do we know anything about her own children and how anything that happened to them?
we kind of do, actually. She had a boy and a girl. The boy really was not involved in any of this, but somehow she recruited her daughter into helping. So her daughter, I think her name was Jenny, I might have that wrong, was almost an assistant. So her daughter and her daughter's husband had been on trial as well.
Interesting.
And for whatever reason, I don't know that they were held culpable for any of this. But yeah, it was kind of like maybe she wanted to, leave the family business to her daughter or something. But yeah.
Well, the boy would have probably had other opportunities, whereas
Perhaps.
girls just didn't have as many opportunities. So it would have been easier for him to walk away.
So it was like never determined that to my knowledge, if clearly you have to be unhinged mentally in order to do something like this. But like what that trigger was, or what the significance of, was it just greed? Was it just that she didn't want to have to rely on somebody for her financial stability or whatever? Like, it's very unclear why. Like, there's just no motive aside from money.
I have the heebie-jeebies all over again.
Isn't that terrible?
It really is. Oh. And you think about the moms who learn later.
Oh, God.
Like
who are already going through
probably
a lot.
already traumatized from handing their child over to somebody to begin with, and then learning that the person you handed this child over to
was a monster.
And a serial killer. Man. Ugh. Okay, I need a break.
Yeah. So I don't know how to make that one funny. The funniest part is, here, I'm going to pull up a picture so you can see this woman.
Will I look at her and be like, yep, serial killer?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Oh.
All right. Check this out. This is her.
Oh, my
in her Sunday
goodness.
finest. Isn't that horrific? Would you leave? Like, would you even go give birth in this woman's care?
Hard no.
She was a cute kid, like in her younger years. Is this a touchscreen? I can't remember. I mean, she, but then,
wow.
Yeah, it's just not cute. And they say, I didn't put it in this story, but they say that it was just her hard way of living because she was a raging alcoholic and doing laudanum, and it changes the mind, it changes you,
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things going on in this brain of hers.
Going out on a limb here, say, there were already mental health issues, and then you're essentially self-medicating, and probably not self-medicating very well or effectively. And so the nutty things you think about doing, maybe you convince yourself they're not so nutty after all, Man, that's that's a new level of no regard for human life, right?
That's the picture, by the way, that was on her wanted poster. Wanted, Amelia Dyer, baby murderer, dead or alive.
Pretty impressive of that's some sleuthing, right? And undercover work that now we know there's people who do undercover jobs all the time. But I wonder how far back that goes, like that type of investigative work that you would pretend to be somebody. And I don't know. I find that to be very interesting.
I mean, detective work, any era. I love those shows where it's set back in time and they have to play detective, and with just
not the technology that we have today.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but also fewer people. I mean,
True.
Now trying to solve a crime, especially with an unknown suspect, there's so many more people on the planet. But then you have this technology that can help narrow it down, hopefully quicker. But there are still so many cases that go unsolved.
Man.
But technology is helping a lot.
Interesting. You are correct. That is not the way I expected that to go.
Well, but, trafficking babies would have been even more horrific, I think,
Well, I mean, I think the additional sufferings they might have suffered obviously didn't happen. But I don't know, man. I go back to the moms who learn later, like, oh, and FYI, like, the person you gave your kid to was terrible.
All because men couldn't be men, or
I guess
men couldn't be dads or can't be bothered, and now the law's not going to hold them accountable.
That's crazy.
I know. Kids need...
Thankfully, some things have changed. We do have some expectations for fatherhood at this point. Let's take a break, and we'll come back, and we'll wrap up this edition of the Escape Pod. We'll lighten things up before we go, because I can't leave on that note. We'll be right back. Hey, listeners, did you know we are podcasting for a cause here in the Escape Pod? Patron support benefits the One Heart campus in Rapid City, South Dakota, where we empower people to overcome crisis and achieve self-sustainability. To learn more, listen to our prologue episode all about One Heart, or visit oneheartrc.org. We are back on the Escape Pod. I'm Julie. I'm here with my co-host Charity. We come to you from the Escape Pod suite in the main provider building of One Heart. We talk about One Heart every once in a while on the podcast, but if you want to learn more about what we actually do here on this transformation campus, please go to our prologue episode. That will help you understand why we ended up doing something of this nature, where we talk about escape and true crime, but also escape from some of the bad in the world. And for us, once a week, we get to just escape from normal day-to-day challenges for like an hour.
While the to-do list grows.
It does a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I checked one thing off, though. So there you go.
Yay.
That's exciting. Anywhere you would like to escape to this week?
One of these days, I'm going to be ready I know you're going to ask me this question.
Do you escape to, so in our little town here, it's not so little, it's like 75,000 people, but I would argue still kind of small. Like, don't you think it has a small town? I came from a really small town, and I still feel like Rapid City is a small town. So we have the stock show.
Yes.
In town. Do you escape to the stock show?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We have a night with the girls planned.
Okay.
Tomorrow night. So,
will you be buying a tractor while you're there?
I will not be buying a tractor, so tell your son I'm
Angus
sorry.
bull.
No. No cattle for me.
What are some of the other names that I think are so fun? Oh. What's the Charlet?
Charlet, yeah.
Yes. Taking home a Charlet bowl this time. Nope. That's a shame.
But I did get lessons one time on serving on the Black Hill Stock Show board. One of the members was showing me pictures of all the different cattle and how you can tell the difference. And I don't remember a damn thing, but
you knew at one point.
I can tell you it's a cow or a bull, but
that's it.
That's about it. Yeah.
I know a few more. So here's my fun fact. So I grew up 45 minutes from Rapid City, roughly, in Deadwood. And when I started my job at the TV station, so I would have been 22 years old, a month shy of 23 when my first stock show.
Just a baby.
Just a wee little thing. And my assignment one day, I had only been working at the TV station 2 months. 2 months, probably about right on the dot. And I remember they handed me my assignments for the day, and they're like, you're going to the stock show, and they have this sale going on and this going on. And I said to the assignment editor, oh, I've never been to the stock show before. And he looked at me like...
You had two heads.
Yeah. He was like, you're from South Dakota, and you've never been to the stock show? And I was like, I'm from Deadwood. So no, I didn't grow up on a farm or a ranch. Like, I don't need an animal, like a large animal. And he thought that was just the wildest thing he'd ever heard.
Well, I had never gone to the stock show until I was probably 18 or 19 years old. And that was because, and in previous episodes, we've talked about the crazy friend that I met at the hell night at the restaurant.
Right.
Okay.
She had a ranch. Her family
she
had
grew
a
up
ranch.
on a ranch.
Yeah.
And
and she took you to the stock show.
That's how I learned how to ride horses and do all that stuff. But yeah, so I went to the stock show. She's like, "Oh, a stock show," and I'm just like, "What?"
Oh man, it's like
it's freaking incredible.
Massive and a family reunion for people. I mean, they see all their peeps, right? And it is very cool. And I did always kind of enjoy like covering different aspects of it. There's a lot that's fun about it, but it just was one of those funny things where he was just shocked that I had never really experienced the stock show prior to that. And I have 2 children now who think that tractors especially are very cool. And so they always want to go. And so we walk around. I give them like a limited amount of time because otherwise, and then because the people who run the booths think it's so fun to have like these young, these boys come up and be all excited about like a cool new tractor. Ooh, last year, my kiddo, who I thought might fail math earlier this year, he didn't, but he struggled with some concepts in math. And so we had a period of about a month where math was like,
the bane of your existence.
Potentially a savant when it comes to prices of large equipment. Because we go to one of the vendors and he's like, "How much do you think that is?" And my eldest is like, I'm going to say like $189,000. And the guy's like, $175,000. Good job. He did it like 3 times. I'm not even kidding you.
Is he like hiding tractor catalogs in his room?
Well, yes, I believe he is. I do. He does. When they're freebies, he grabs them. Oh, yeah.
But I mean, even when he was little.
So he's looked enough at them that he can kind of gauge what it is and how much it might be. And by God, he's really close.
I know quite a few people that have had their entire careers at Caterpillar. I know he's a John Deere boy, though. But
we know some
John Deere has engineers, but he's got to hack that math. I'm telling you.
It was like The Price is Right. Like stock show style.
Hilarious.
It was hilarious. It was funny. And then I'm like, okay, can we go now? Because I've heard enough about how expensive this stuff is. Don't break anything when you're looking at it.
Oh, it was kind of funny, too, because when I served on that board, I was a vegetarian for a lot of years. And so not only was I like the urban girl. Oh, I did. I let that. They gave me hell. And then I can't remember I just, for whatever reason, wasn't getting the nutrients I needed. I wasn't. So I reintroduced meat into my diet and felt a lot better. And they were very proud of me. But the girl who, this is going to bring it all full circle. So the girl who introduced me to the ranching world, and it's fast. It is so cool. I've learned a lot about it over the last 12, 13 years or so. But she also is one of the worst puking stories that I can remember, since we were talking about vomit earlier. So this was back in college. There was a phase we went through where we were drinking something called Colorado Bulldogs. Do you know what that drink is?
I maybe did at some point, but I don't know now.
Let's see. Colorado Bulldog.
What would that be?
It was Kahlua cream, Coke, maybe vodka. I don't know. But it's the cream. So we made these up by the pitcher and drank a lot of them. Well, she is in my husband's frat room. So it was a lofted room, and she's up on the couch. And, she vomits all over the couch, all over the floor, the shag carpet, and it was curdled cream. So, I know. Julie just about, there's the garbage can. But it was horrible. And his roommate comes home in the morning, opens the door, closes the door, and goes somewhere else. That poor guy, he just put up with so much.
I feel like...
And then she was so hammered. She's trying to clean it up with a vacuum. And
well, now you've ruined a vacuum.
It was awful. We had to burn everything. Like it was bad. So I have never had a Colorado Bulldog since.
I had a hard, and I suppose we had a spill. I don't think it was super bad, but like of a little milk in the car. And I just remember being like, I hit a point where I'm like, there's no milk in the car.
Yeah.
Like unless it was in like an actual baby bottle.
Yeah.
Because I just couldn't. I'm like, I can't try for days to get a weird smell out again. Yeah. That's horrifying.
So yeah, I'm escaping projectile vomit and going to the stock show, and hopefully not too wild of a night because I haven't seen my girlfriends for a while. So.
Oh, you're escaping to a girls' night.
It is.
Yay. Yeah. I'm escaping to the stock show with two boys who will walk me around for hours, show me all the tractors.
All the tractors.
We went to the John Deere Museum, the pavilion in Moline, Illinois, coming back from a trip once. And the man at the information desk, because my child was so excited, said, "Are you a farm family?" And I said, I'm on television and my husband's a firefighter. No. No. I'm sorry.
Where did he get this? Was it from the Virginia farm?
Yeah, I think so. And my husband bought him the eldest, bought him like a video, and it had very catchy songs in it, all about John Deere. I think they're actually called All About John Deere. And he was like two or three, and it just stuck. And it's stuck ever since. And
see, that just proves how
important those first few years are. Yeah.
Little people's brains are.
Yeah, for sure.
I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, and there was a listener story, and she was talking about how she's X number of months pregnant listening to this podcast, and she's worried that she might be cooking the next serial killer because she's listening to a podcast that's all about murder. And I know, like, can my baby hear it? And yeah,
that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I don't worry about that, but I do worry about like having nightmares. So that's why I don't listen to those things, especially at night, I suppose. Yeah. And it's not that I don't find them interesting, because I do, but I do kind of know myself.
With my startle reflex, just from
you would hate it
and all this stuff, I know you would think that I wouldn't.
Instead, you're like drawn to it
every day.
Yeah,
I'm listening to something like every day.
Well, speaking of listeners, do you want to tell our listeners where they can find us, where they can contact us, all those things?
Yeah, you can go to our podcast website at escapepod.live. Socials, you can hit us up there. Reach out if you just want to send us a note like, hey, you're doing a really good job. You don't suck, or you do suck. Just,
say it nicely.
Say it nicely, please. You can send those to justbecause@escapepod.live. Or if you are a fellow escape artist and have a story of transforming your life in any way, escaping cycles, breaking cycles, we have a lot of people here who have finally left abusers and are rebuilding their confidence and their identity and their self-worth. And it's just really empowering. And I think there's so many, just based on our ratios here and our percentages of people who have endured these types of violent crime, I'm sure it's much more prevalent out in community.
Can I just put a positive spin going back to our topic today about
vomit?
The baby farmer.
Okay.
That we actually see numerous families reunited on this campus. Yeah. So we are the exact opposite of Ms. Dyer.
Just call her ogress.
Just in 2023, what do we have? 17 family reunifications, something along those lines. So, bringing families back together, helping them be successful together. We like to see those stories.
It's so cool. I remember a story, an occurrence where one of our single moms got reunited with her two kiddos, two little boys, the most adorable things ever. And I just wanted to go meet these little kids because I don't get to do the direct services. And so I'd heard that this was going to happen, and I see them walking past my office window. So I go and meet them, and I want to meet the little guys. And I don't know how old they were at the time. Maybe 3 and 5.
Yeah, they're pretty young.
2 and 4.
Yeah.
And come up and shook my hand, and I'm just like melting all over the place. So I take them back. Mom goes with her care coordinator, and I take the little guys on a little treasure hunt to go find candy. And we're walking, and at the end of my hallway, they can look through like Teresa's office and see the towers. And
where people live.
Where people
That's
live.
Where they live
and
on
the little
campus.
one goes, "Oh, look, that's my mom's house."
Aww.
And it was just the coolest thing. Like he was so proud and so excited, and
Yeah. Amazing stuff. So feel free to write in just because at escapepod.live, or like Charity said, if you are an escape artist yourself, maybe it's a story that we could share here on our podcast, go to escapeartist at escapepod.live. We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable. How you grapple with it is optional.
Or vomit at it. I mean, just that. Screw you, trauma. I'm going to barf all over you.
Stay resilient, folks.
And keep laughing.